years, Israel said Iran.
Okay, let's, sorry for this. Okay, here we go. Okay, let's open a word of prayer. Lord, thanks for your word, your promises to us, the information that you gave us to navigate through times that we live in. Pray you'll bless our time together today. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, somebody asked me, why'd you call it blowtorch? And it's like, it's the only thing I could think of. It seemed like everybody was taking a blowtorch to everything. I mean, look, President Trump was taking a blowtorch to some people this week, and the favor was returned by a lot of people. And then I think I got it from reading some things about the Supreme Court decision where Justice Amy Coney Barrett was described as taking a blowtorch to Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. And if I have time, I'll do that. I don't know if I have time. By the way, I did a bunch of things this week. I did a lot of interviews, did a roundtable Wednesday night on Technocracy. I did some interviews with people Friday. I think it was Friday. I did an interview with Bill and Tanya Koenig. And you can find that under the live tab on our website. I also did an update on my own just because Bill and I had kind of a mix-up in communication on the start time. And I also recorded interviews with David Fiorazo and Brandon Holthouse, and I don't know when those will be posted. I think David's will go up on the one with David Fiorazo at Worldview Matters will go up on Tuesday. So it was a very busy week. And it was pretty hot and humid around here, right? And so the other place I got this is I don't know if they actually published these, but this was on the Time Magazine website. And they've been doing these little drawings of Trump ever since he was Trump 45, now Trump 47. They're continuing. And you kind of get the impression that they don't really like him all that much. And I will tell you, everybody's mad at him. Even people on the right are upset that he bombed the Fordow and Natanz and Isfahan nuclear facilities. Again, this is my little wheel of prophecy, which I don't have any time to talk about, although some of this stuff is coming about. For example, some of the things we don't even really talk about, even though they're coming up. For example, up here in the right-hand corner, you have the Rubik's Cube of the Sustainable Development Goals. That's still in play. That's still coming about. Next to it, you have the papers there. That's the Abraham Accords. And we'll talk a little bit about that this week because they came up. We got the temple, we got the red heifer. And boy, a lot of these things are really in play. And again, I'm sitting here and I'm talking to people, and I'm open to rethinking everything. Okay, I don't think we should be real dogmatic about things. And here's a work in process. You'll love this one. This is my end time video monitor wall. But as you can see, I haven't had time to populate it because everybody in the world keeps doing things. And I want you to keep. And it'd be nice if everybody just took the week off, go play some golf or something, because I will tell you, I hear this from guys all the time that do this, that it's really reached the point where it's impossible to keep up. And we could do hours and hours of things. So I'll refer you to, like I said, go to our website under the live tab and do a Google search on my name on YouTube, and then click on upload date. You'll get the most recent stuff that other people have posted that I've done with them. I mean, I don't even remember what I talked about some places. It's always funny. Somebody will write to me and they will say, John, you need to talk about subject X. And sometimes I'll say, well, what I'll do is I'll go check my notes from the prior week and say, well, I talked about that last week. So look, I don't even remember all the time what I talked about, So I don't expect everybody else to. But it's always funny because inevitably I'll find out, oh yeah, I talked about that, or I talked about that 6 months ago or 5 months ago, which was the case with a thing that we'll talk a little bit. I'll bring out some of my slides. So this is in no particular order. This is a map of the Middle East. And one of the things that after the attack on the nuclear facilities, which just happened last week, like a week ago. It seems like it was like a month ago. Iran, one of the ways you judge is Iran, the leadership of Iran getting the message, is to judge them by what they do. And so then here's what they did. The parliament in Iran said, we're going to block the Strait of Hormuz. And that's a major waterway there along the Persian Gulf, right there in that circular area. The sea lanes there, the ships have to go by each other in both directions. About 30% of the world's oil goes through there. China gets about 60% of its oil that comes from Iran. Even though they're under sanctions, they do turn the transponders off on tankers. But there's like 2 lanes, and they're each about 2 miles wide to get through there. And so it's a big choke point. In fact, if you look at a map of the world, particularly in the Middle East, for example, you'll see a choke point down here by Yemen. There's another choke point there at the Suez Canal. If you look over in the South China Sea, there's a couple choke points. There's one at the Panama Canal. And so world shipping is, I guess, what I would say fragile. It needs to be protected by somebody, and it's a big deal. So as much as I've tried to organize this, so we'll just do our best. This is from the Australian. By the way, the Australian had some pretty good articles this week. Trump, this was a headline in their news magazine, I think yesterday. Trump forces a global pivot. Things have changed dramatically in the world. I mean, when Trump got involved in the Middle East, all the people on I don't know a better term, the woke right in America, like the Tucker Carlsons and other people, they had a meltdown. They were going to cause world wars, World War III. The oil prices are going to go to $200 a barrel. The world economy is going to crash. And so Trump did this, and he said, I'm going to bomb those nuclear facilities, and Trump bombed those nuclear facilities, and there were no boots on the ground. We're going to have to spend billions and billions of dollars that we don't have, and trillions of dollars, and and how many Americans died in the past week, and what happened in Iran? By my count, 0. How many troops were put on the ground, actually on the ground? 0. In fact, Trump's pulling some troops out of the Middle East. But everybody's shifting in the world. It's a very, very volatile time for things happening in the world. This is a good article by Daniel Pipes, also at the Australian. What just happened in the Middle East? And he goes through it. He summarizes. Maybe it'd be good to go through and actually read these. So let me get my... Okay. So here's what Daniel Pipes. Now, Daniel Pipes is one of the founders of the Middle East Forum. It's been around a long time. I believe his father was also involved in Middle East analysis. I've never met him. I've been in the same room with him a few times. But smart guy, but I don't agree with him on everything, by the way, and that's okay. He'll come around, right? But one of the things he used to say was that Israel was having problems in areas of Israel, Judea, Samaria, because they didn't humiliate their opponent. But now he's backed off of that, and a lot of people were kind of scratching our head. Well, like if it applied 10 years ago, Daniel, why does it apply now? But anyway, I think this is a pretty fair analysis. So here it says here, the White House cowboy succeeded in uninhibited, reckless Norm-breaking egomaniac dominates American public life as no politician can or has in 236 years. Yes, Donald Trump served as president once before, but he felt relatively constrained. Now he doesn't. And so he's going to do things that he thinks. And by the way, I could just do a whole update of Donald Trump's posts on Truth Social. And there's something, I think, good about that because it kind of gets the media out of the way. And if you want to know what Donald Trump is thinking, just wait 5 seconds and he'll post something about it 24/7. It's like, just rest, take a nap, give us all some time to analyze it. But listen, he said he was going to do some things and he did them and he didn't do any more. But he's also said, Iran, if you mess around, I'm going to do more. And I would think that at this point, you ought to take him a little bit serious. Down here, Washington preempted a potential nuclear enemy. And that's true. There's a lot of controversy. I'll play a long clip of a Pentagon press conference that talked about it. There was a lot of controversy. Did we do anything? Did it accomplish anything? Was it good? Was it that much? Was it nothing? And the one thing you need to keep in mind through all of this is that when Jesus said wars and rumors of wars, I think maybe a good interpretation it might be wars and wars of rumors. Because when you look at what's going on in Washington, for weeks now, Trump and Netanyahu aren't getting along. They don't like each other. Trump is mad at Netanyahu. Then they come out and say, no, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. And then this week, just before I spoke last Sunday, they had bombed the Fodor plant, not Frodo, but Fordo plant. Frodo was in the Hobbit series, Lord of the Rings. I did make a funny post up. He said, no, Trump, I said Frodo, not Fordo. But anyway, so immediately what happened was people are coming out. The New York Times and CNN, big surprise, right, of those two news organizations, came out and said, oh, well, there wasn't that much damage. They were leaked the Defense Intelligence Agency assessment, and it said maybe only set the program back a few months or few weeks or months. But also, what they never said, how many of you saw when they reported about this leaked report, did they tell you this, that the report said that it was of low confidence? The one they said, it was low confidence. But they reported it like it was biblical truth. And that's the problem, is what we have now is we have, as I said, there's wars, rumors of wars, and wars of rumors, because there is a contingent in our military intelligence agencies that's very anti-Israel, pro-Iran, and anti-Trump, big time. So they're always leaking things, and they have these little sycophants in the press that run around and report everything they get without any analysis. And I think Trump, you'll see some clips of him today saying, like, why don't you guys actually read the documents or give me a call? And by the way, I think this week, in the 5 months that Trump has been in office now, for a second term, he has, like, I don't know how many more press conferences and everything he's had than Biden did in 4 years. And you remember it was just a year ago this past week that Biden didn't do too well in the presidential debate, and everything kind of fell apart there. So, interesting. So, Washington preempted a potential nuclear enemy. It says here, Americans can still lead. Number 3, good point. There has been a lot of Americans leading from behind. Trump saying those days are over. Number 4, a partisan Washington Jerusalem bond. It does appear right now that Trump and Netanyahu are getting along. Trump took the extraordinary opportunity this week. I'm only bringing it up because I think I have some slides on it. But he came out on Truth Social and said, you need to stop this prosecution against Benjamin Netanyahu. It's just terrible what's doing. He's in the midst of a war. You should leave him alone. You should dismiss these cases. Now, even pro-Netanyahu politicians in Israel came out and said, Mr. President, that's really not appropriate. But I don't think that matters to President Trump. It's something that a lot of us have been saying for some time. It's a big problem. And again, I can't remember if I'll get to it or not. I preached first hour, so I'm those slides are still kind of flipping through the PowerPoint. That's a couple PowerPoints in my head up here. But Netanyahu is testifying in trial. He's under indictment, got 2 or 3 cases that are going. When I was there in December of 2022 at the Knesset, I asked people, how long are these cases have been going on for years against Netanyahu? How long are they going to go on? So that was December of 2022. They said 5 to 6 more years. Netanyahu has been sitting a couple weeks a month since this war started with Hamas, testifying in the trial. Under cross-examination, he's asked for that to be postponed, and the court says, no, you can't. Why? Why do you want to postpone it? What's going on? It's unbelievable. I mean, and you talk about lawfare. So Trump's right. So there's a good bond, and they have some things in common. Number 5, a quick, decisive U.S. Middle East success. That's true. And by the way, what did everybody say? Steve Bannon, Matt Gaetz, Tucker Carlson, you're bringing us into war. We're going to be war. We're going to have troops on the ground. And Tucker Carlson, by the way, had this really dramatic post that I would, even teenage girls wouldn't put up something like this about, it's going to be World War III. It's immediately, millions of people are going to die and trillions of dollars. And it didn't happen. Daniel Pipes is correct. Look, could have happened. That's always a possibility. But again, we're in this area of, maybe that's what I should have titled this, Wars of Rumors. Number 6, alarmists make strong predictions. Okay, well, that was what I was just talking about. Everybody was, what's the proverbial term? They got their panties in a bunch about everything that Trump does and everything's going to happen. And it didn't turn out. Number 7, air power won the day. This was a dramatic display of superior air power. The U.S. did things that no other country in the world can do. Trump was exactly right when he said that. Nobody else can do this. We have our, as he would say, our big, beautiful B-2 bombers, and they can drop these bombs like within a meter of the center of the target. Not a meter of the target, a meter of the center of the target from 50,000 feet with a plane flying, close to the speed of sound. And they can fly these things in through a window. It's an amazing, and these are 30,000-pound bombs. And we're the only country in the world that can do that right now, at least as far as I know. Number 8, pre-placed agents changes the battlefield. We saw this in Ukraine a couple of weeks ago, where Ukraine had set up a trucking company inside Russia, caused a lot of damage. All the people, and this happens with regularity in Russia. At one point, maybe at some point, they will actually follow through in this, but they always say we're going to start nuclear war, and they don't. Because I think they know that there is a risk and a consequence to doing that. But Ukraine set up a trucking company inside Russia, set up apparently a manufacturing company, and Israel had done the same thing. Over a period of about 20 years, they had been planning this operation that they unleashed a couple of weeks ago, just a little over 2 weeks ago. Boy, it seems like it's been 6 months ago, but it's only been 2 weeks. They had a 12-day war in the Middle East. That's what everybody's calling it. And a lot of people are saying this is as great a victory for Israel as they achieved in the preemptive Six-Day War in 1967. I mean, these are things that, I asked this question this week, are we going to be reading history books in the millennium? If so, these are things that we're going to be reading about, because these are incredible military operations. And by the way, there are military operations in the millennium. At the end of the millennium, there's a Gog-Magog war that's prophesied in Revelation. What's up with, how does that happen? Where do I'm still sort of scratching my head over how that happens and what the logistics and everything are, because they talk about the millennium will beat swords into plowshares, swords into plowshares. Well, then there's a war at the end of the millennium when Satan is unleashed or released. I don't know. Okay, so let's go on here. Israel dominates. It was clear that Israel pretty much had free reign in everything that they did. Israel's Gaza failure, I think that's a fair assessment by Daniel Pipes. Seth Frantzman was writing about that even today, or tweeting about it, or whatever you call it. I don't know if you call it Xing. It would be posting on X. Tweeting always sounded better anyway, so I'll call it tweeting. But look, Israel still has this problem in Gaza. They started a big offensive a couple weeks ago, and from what I can see is that hasn't accomplished much. There was somebody got next to a armored personnel carrier, I don't know if he blew himself up or threw something in the armored personnel carrier, and 7 young IDF soldiers were killed the other day. And this is still a major tragedy. And when you talk to people in Israel, almost everybody in Israel will know one of those soldiers or the family of one of those soldiers. And so it's a very personal thing all the time. So since October 7th, there's been a lot of personal trauma in Israel. And there's been a lot of trauma in Gaza as well, and in the West Bank, and in Syria, and in Lebanon, and now in Iran on a pretty epic scale. But there's still this problem. Performative war replaced real war. Not for the first time. Tehran only pretended to fight Israel and the U.S. so it could compliment itself on winning a great victory. And part of this was done, as they were getting close to the ceasefire, they always want the ceasefire to take effect in 6 hours or 12 hours so they can get their last shots in. So what happened was, it was pretty clear that it was a very big propaganda thing that happened. Iran launched missiles into Qatar at the big U.S. base, probably the biggest U.S. base in the Middle East. And they can say, see, we attacked those Americans, but everything was shot down. Nothing happened. It was all performance art. And that's what happened. This was part of the war. And then number 12, it says, I forget what number 12 is. Iran attacked an ally. And that's a big deal with a lot of people in America right now. We don't want Israel as an ally. I will tell you, the anti-Israel, anti-Zionist rhetoric is off the charts. You'll see some examples of this. You would not believe the stuff that is sent to me, because I happen to support Israel. I think it's very important. I think it's biblical. And there's a very big war in the evangelical church. I said this the day after October 7th. The issue of Israel and Zionism will be the most divisive issue in the church until Jesus returns. And I stand by that. And I think that that's bearing out, at least right now. So here's some things, and again, this is in no particular order. Iran set up nuclear secrecy following U.S. strikes. What you're going to see, so the question will be, how effective were the strikes? Appears to be pretty effective, but ultimately, did they shut down the Iranian program? No. Iran is going to make adaptations. They're going to try to be more secret. On the Israeli side of this, his name is Katani. He's got a silver beard and hair and glasses. And, they're putting up AI generated pictures of him with his bust outside of the Mossad headquarters, the hero of the operation, and that, because it's a big propaganda thing. So they're trying to make this guy look like he's working for Israel. And it's like, well, he was never where the bombs landed, and he didn't get hurt. He's walking around at the funeral of the Iranian guys the other day. And so it's sort of a standing joke now. Like, they're making it look like he was the head Mossad agent within Iran. And maybe he was, but he's still living and he's still walking around. But what you're going to see is Iran's going to adapt. They're smart people. They're going to adapt. They're going to harden their nuclear sites. They're going to dig them further into the ground. They're going to try to be more secretive. But look, for years, Israel has been saying they're close to a bomb, they're close to a bomb. And so in American right-wing politics right now, everybody says, well, Netanyahu's just been lying to us for 30 years. He's been saying the same thing. Well, yeah, he has. But maybe they were close to the bomb, Israel did something. They got close to the bomb, Israel did something. And that's true over and over again. And so these, frankly, geopolitical morons like Steve Bannon, Tom Massey, Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, let's name some names, they're all on Bannon's war room saying, oh, Netanyahu is just like, we need regime change in Tel Aviv. That's what they were saying this week. And so they're saying all these things, but they ignore all the things that Israel's been doing over the years. Remember the operation to get the entire nuclear archive of documents out of a warehouse in Tehran to Israel. When did that happen? 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago? Unbelievable operation. But you see, every time they get close, there's a big operation and they do something. So Iran's trying to make it secret. We don't know whether they'll succeed or not, but here's an example of what they're doing. Near the Natanz plant, there's a place called Pickaxe Mountain, and this is reported in the Telegraph and elsewhere. It's an ultra-secure tunnel complex far deeper than the Fordo site obliterated in U.S. strikes. And I always like how, well, now we're going to put obliterated in scare quotes because we're not sure whether it's true or not. That passes for journalism at the Telegraph. But here, Voices from the East, it says this: the secret nuclear facility that the IRGC is hiding was untouched. So the Fordo plant's about 300 feet underground, 100 meters. The Pickaxe Mountain is 300 meters, not over 900 feet, almost 1,000 feet underground. And there's nothing that anybody's going to use, I think, to go after that facility. And so this is a big problem. How do you interrupt that flow? Well, Israel, they took out top nuclear scientists, they took out a couple of their facilities, and the answer is, don't know. There's a big concern that there was about 400 kilograms, so about 800, 900 pounds of enriched plutonium at the Fordo facility. There's some reports of trucks coming to get it. Trump and everybody said, we got it, don't worry about it. And there were people, oh, look, they're going to hit that Fordo facility and there's going to be a nuclear radioactive cloud that's going to circle the earth. I heard the people on Christian radio programs saying that, and it's like, guys, calm down, unbunch your panties, okay? By the way, I said this, it could happen, and it wouldn't be a good thing. But I said if it happened, what Trump ought to do is he ought to use a political advantage. Here's what, if I was Trump, this is what I'd do. Vladimir, hello, Vladimir, how you doing? Yes, we had a big, beautiful operation in Iran. Yes, there is some plutonium radioactivity there in the area. Well, let me tell you what, Vladimir, here's an opportunity for make a big, beautiful deal with Iran for you to go in and clean up that radioactive plutonium. Because you guys ought to know how to do it because you stunk at Chernobyl and you should have learned some lessons from that. So now here's an opportunity to take that knowledge and apply it. Now, I don't know if that would get you a meeting with Putin, but, I just think that I just can see Trump doing that. Let's make a deal to get that done. So, but this facility at Pickaxe Mountain is so the red area is Natanz, and then the nuclear facility that's under a mountain. And Pam, remember, we were driving around the West and we saw these mountain ranges and valleys. And I kept saying, I don't know that you're going to be able to get these things because they're buried under a mountain. That's a lot of rock. And that doesn't even include that they would put these things under reinforced concrete. But they did. So here's a guy. This guy is named David Keyes. I believe he was a spokesperson for for Netanyahu at one point. And he says this. This is a post he made on X the other day on June 24th. How on earth can Israel claim for so long that Iran has been so close to getting nukes? At Comic Dave Smith. Have you seen this Dave Smith guy? I think Andrew Murray, is it Andrew Murray, had the perfect comment was, he's a clown. He's a professional clown. And he's on all these shows, Piers Morgan and everything. He's incoherent. He's illogical. He thinks he's really smart, which is really the kind of guy that you want to get in the debate that think they're really smarter than everybody else when they're not. Says we're either mistaken or lying. Here's the real explanation. So here's a few minutes of what he says.
For years, Israel said Iran was very close to acquiring nuclear weapons. And yet Iran somehow still doesn't have nukes. Commentators like Dave Smith say there are two possibilities.
Do you guys think Benjamin Netanyahu has been mistaken for 30 years, claiming that Iran is a year to 3 years away from a nuke? Or was he lying?
Mistaken or lying? Only two options. Well, for several years, I served as Prime Minister Netanyahu's spokesman, and I actually think there might be a third option. Maybe, and I know this sounds crazy, but maybe a 24/7 covert war waged by arguably the world's greatest intelligence service had something to do with keeping nukes just out of reach of Iran's dictators. According to foreign sources, every few months, nuclear facilities in Iran would spontaneously malfunction. Centrifuges would start spinning a little too fast or a little too slow. Fires would mysteriously break out at ballistic missile factories. Drone warehouses suddenly went poof. Every week or so, top nuclear scientists furiously working to destroy Israel would magically meet their maker. And sometimes Iran's secret atomic archives, filled with their most sensitive nuclear secrets, would be carted out of Tehran and put on full display at Israel's military headquarters. Imagine that. I know it's a wild theory, but could this Herculean war waged for decades have kept Iran from actually getting nukes? Seems plausible to me. When someone confidently states that there are only two options and that you're either mistaken or lying, it's worth ever so briefly considering if there are alternative explanations. Anyway, that's all in the past now. Iran's ambitions to acquire the deadliest weapons on Earth have perished in a series of massive explosions thanks to the heroism of the Israeli Air Force and the American Air Force. Thanks especially to President Trump's bold decision to ground the nuclear sites at Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan into dust. Israel is immeasurably safer. So is America, the Iranian people, the West, and civilization itself. So take a moment today and say a quiet thank you to the thousands upon thousands of soldiers and intelligence operatives who risked life and limb to stop Iran's jihadist terrorist dictatorship from acquiring nuclear weapons. It's the least we can do.
Well, that's pretty... So I agree with him. I mean, I've been following this for a lot of years, and it chagrins me, annoys me that I watched all these people all over what we would call right-wing media. Oh, Israel, they're lying in Netanyahu. Listen, no, I remember. Have him on your program, have me on your program, and we'll walk you through the last 30 years of historical things that Israel has done, things that have been shocking to militaries all over the world. How did they do that? How did they get those people in there? It's amazing. And in this operation, it was even bigger. They did this in Hezbollah. They had the beepers, the pagers, and then they went to walkie-talkies, and the walkie-talkies started blowing up. All these things are done over 10 years, and it's operation after operation after operation. And I will tell you, I know this will make a lot of people upset, I think there's a supernatural element involved in all of this. And I have Israeli friends, Orthodox Jewish friends that say, Hashem helped. And we see the hand of Hashem and everything. So that's good. So here's there's a little video that I kind of pieced together. This is the B-2 bombers that took off. They flew, 36 hours. They flew all the way from Missouri. Some went like the other direction. They were coming from the east. These came from the west. It was sort of a head fake. Sort of like, remember head fake, like Larry Bird head fake? To get them, they launched these GBU 57 bombs, 30,000 pounds. They have wings that deploy when they're dropped. And these are just bad. So there's the drop, and you see the wings. There's drop without the wings, but the wings will come out, and then it can fly to the target. And they knew that there were these shafts there, air shafts there, that were a vulnerability at Fordo. At Fordo, they dropped 12 of these things, 12 30,000-pound bombs. One of these planes can carry 2 of them. So they had, I don't know, I think we have 20 bombers like this. It's just a bad-looking plane, don't you think? It's the stuff of nightmares if they're coming after you. These things, by the way, they cost over $2 billion each. I was talking to a retired Air Force general yesterday. He says, I was in a B-2 cockpit just the other week. And the first question I asked him was, would I fit? And he kind of gave me that look, like, really, John, come on, no. And he was a fighter pilot, so he's not that big. So this was a really big deal. And then after the thing happened, Trump came out immediately and said, we got a ceasefire. The ceasefire is in effect. Jonathan Spire over at the Australian wrote this the other day, yesterday, I think. If the tenuous ceasefire declared by Donald Trump after 12 days of fighting between Israel and Iran holds, then the dramatic events of the past few days will have failed to produce a fundamental change in the strategic situation in the Middle East. And by the way, I know Jonathan. I'm trying to get an interview with him. He's one of the top, if not the top, military correspondents in the Middle East. I mean, if you ever sit down and talk to this guy, it's like, how does he's so articulate and smart and understands all of these different issues. So this is what he said. Israel and the U.S. have demonstrated their vast tactical superiority over the Iranians. Tehran had no adequate defense against Israeli air power and intelligence penetration. Israel built and maintained an air corridor to Iran over the unguarded skies of Syria and Iraq. It then struck at a wide range of targets going far beyond sites related to the nuclear project. Senior personnel from the various branches of Iran's military, scientists, Islamic Revolutionary Guard facility, even Iran's central prison were all within range of Israel's planes. Israel had complete air superiority, control of the airspaces over Iran. Iranian missiles on occasion penetrated Israeli air defenses, causing significant damage to property and infrastructure. People were killed. Even after the ceasefire was announced, there was a strike in Beersheba, hit a safe room at an apartment building. 4 people were killed, a mother, her 18-year-old son, it was, I think, an IDF reservist, his girlfriend, and then a lady, I think, in her 70s or 80s. So, I mean, look, there were people killed in Iran also, but when the smoke clears, it will be apparent that the Iranian regime and its various projects have survived, battered and diminished, certainly, but intact. And that's the problem. Much now will depend on continued Israeli and international willingness to maintain the pressure on the Iranian regime and to prevent it from rebuilding its capacities. This is perhaps most crucially the case with regard to the nuclear program. The location of Iran's stockpiles of enriched uranium remains unaccounted for. According to a statement by the IAEI Director General, Iran claims to have moved uranium and equipment from the Fordo and Isfahan enrichment facilities before the U.S. strike on Sunday. If the ceasefire holds, the fighting will have concluded without any Iranian commitment regarding uranium or any new arrangements for the inspection of nuclear facilities. In fact, they're going the other way. They're going to withdraw from the IAEA. They're going to keep people from doing it. Jonathan continues, the nuclear project, though heavily damaged and diminished, will have survived, as has the ambition to repair and continue it. Will Israel now retain the right in the diplomatic space to continue and take ongoing kinetic action against the program and against Iranian efforts to restart it? Much will depend on the answer to this question. Similarly, Tehran's assets across the Middle East have significantly weakened across the past 20 months of conflict, but they have not been entirely eliminated. But they've been hurt. By the way, one thing you should have noticed, when the U.S. got involved and bombed those facilities, 12 giant bombs on Fordo alone, how many missiles, rockets were launched by Hezbollah? 0. How many were launched by Hamas? 0. How many were launched by Syria? 0. How many were launched during this period of time by Yemen? I think 1. And it was intercepted. So there's been a significant change in the threat analysis that Israel faces. I did an interview, a year ago with Miri Eisen. She's a security expert in Israel. And when we first did our first interview after October 7th, the concern was there are going to be 17 to 20,000 dead Israelis every week for weeks on end, for like 8, 9, 10 weeks. How many were dead? Tragically, there were some, but there weren't 17,000 a week. And that's dead. That's not dead and injured. So this was going to be a very big deal. And so Israel was incredibly sophisticated, tenacious, successful in what it did in eliminating the threat. It decapitated the leadership of Hezbollah, of Hamas. It's been an amazing operation. Has it been perfect? No. Has it accomplished all their goals? No, it has not. And so where I do agree with like a guy like Steve Bannon is, Israel should take care of this. Okay, let them take care of us and stop interfering with them. They'll build those 30,000-pound bombs, but we have agreements with them that restrict them from doing this. So, okay, U.S., get out of the way, mind our own business, and let them operate. And maybe they'll be able to take care of it. Let's see. The militias in these other areas like Iraq and Hezbollah are still around, but rather than turn the Iraqi state into a fully fledged tool or ally of Iran, this appears to have had the opposite effect, causing the militias to think about their own considerable political and economic assets and interests and choose not to risk them. The Yemeni Houthis remain similarly intact and similarly fail to come out with guns blazing for their Iranian patrons during the past 2 weeks. So this is a big deal. The bottom line, he says, is that Iran emerges from the latest round of fighting with its capacity significantly reduced, but with the regime still in existence and still determined to push ahead with its project for regional hegemony. The nuclear missile and proxy components of this strategy appear to be damaged but not destroyed. What is key now will be the determination of Israel and its allies to continue to maintain Iran's weakened state and to extend it. Good article by Jonathan Spire. And by the way, in the show notes, there's a link to articles by Jonathan Spire, Seth Frantzman, and Herb Keenan from the Jerusalem Post. So here's the Economist cover this week. And you have to watch imagery. Very important that you look at the image closely and analyze it. So what do you see here? You see the dove, but the tail of the dove is what? A B-2 bomber. By the way, there were pictures all over Israeli social media. They have, if you go to Shabbat dinner in Israel, you will have bread, challah bread. And so this week, the challah breads, a lot of them were baked in the shape of a B-2 bomber. Some with the face of Donald Trump at the front. So, because they're grateful for what the U.S. did, but how to win the peace. So there was a big article in Israel Hayom the other day, and I talked with the Koenigs about this, and it came out. It says, like, here's the plan that Netanyahu and Trump have agreed to. And at the time, we were all talking about it. Some of it didn't make any sense, and it appeared, and now Trump and Netanyahu have kind of come out. So we didn't say that. There was one place where one media was saying Trump is going to spend $30 billion rebuilding Iranian nuclear facilities. And Trump posted on True Social, that's fake news, as he, in all caps, that's fake news. Why don't these people check things out before they print them? Because there is a war of rumors going on in our government, and it's trying to shape public opinion and public policy. So there were a number of things that were supposed to come out of this. Israel Hayom, this got all kinds of press. I mean, everybody was, I kind of jokingly said, I don't know if it was my interview with Brandon, I said, there are 500 missiles launched by Iran during this war, and that was exceeded by the number of breaking prophecy updates done by us guys in the prophecy community. So, and I put myself in that category because we're all talking about, because it's important. So down here in Israel Hayom, there's a summary of this is what was reported. Turns out it's not true. Here's the summary points. The war in Gaza will end within 2 weeks. Release all of the abductees. The strip is to be administered by 4 Arab countries, including Egypt and the Emirates. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it could be. There is some softening on the position of different parties in the Arab world to what's going on. Why? I think it goes back, I think Dr. Mordecai Kadar talks about this, the strong horse theory of Arab geopolitics. They respect it when somebody stands up for themselves and have the strong horse, whether they like them or not. Now, so there's a lot of talk. The Saudis are coming into the Abraham Accords. I don't know if this is true. I will tell you that one of the guys who used to be the foreign minister of Saudi Arabia did an interview with The National, and he came out and said, Israel, we got to do a 2-state solution. We got to respect the Palestinian rights. Look, he's 80 years old. He's part of the King Salman's generation. I personally think that something will change in this regard when King Salman passes away. But until then, in that culture, you respect the elder father. Yeah, you're not going to, I will not see Mohammed bin Salman say anything contrary to what his father wants to do. He's indicated sort of that this is where he's going to go. But anyway, so another one, countries in the world will accept, Gazans that want to immigrate. Right now, Gazans want to get out of Gaza. Look at it. Would you want to live there? Put up with this? By the way, aid trucks go in. There's video after video after video of Hamas guys riding with guns on top of the aid trucks. They're stealing everything. And they accuse Israel of killing people and slaughtering people. And maybe they're shooting at people that they think are terrorists. I don't know. I don't know the answer to the question. I'm not there. You're not there. Nobody is there. And certainly, you can't believe the UN because a lot of these Hamas guys work for the UN. The Abraham Accords will be expanded. Muslim and Arab countries, including Syria and Saudi Arabia, will officially recognize Israel and establish relations with it. Now, again, Saudi Arabia is not going to do that, but there is talk, news articles just this morning in Syrian press about Syria coming into the Abraham Accords, and they're going to not make a claim on the Golan Heights. By the way, somebody made a good point that in the number of years since Syria and Israel have existed as a country, Israel's controlled the Golan Heights far longer than Syria has. So what's up with that? Well, what's up with that is that Syria doesn't have the firepower to do it. So that's a big deal. But Syria may come into the Abraham Accords. And by the way, talked to Bill about this, Bill and Tanya Koenig, and other people. I'm just not a huge fan of the Abraham Accords. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. Number 4, Israel will sue, will show willingness for a future solution to the conflict with the Palestinians under the two-state idea on condition of reforms being made in the Palestinian Authority. This is, by the way, this is when you kind of start to think like this really can't be real. But I'm telling you, everybody in the world is pushing for a two-state solution. 95% of the people. It makes no sense. It's the strategic high country, high places, mountains. It's the watershed of Israel. Israel's not going to give up. And then they would said that the U.S. will recognize the application of some sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. So this is the dream of a lot of people. And so this is Trump this morning at 1:19 a.m. when most of you were sleeping. It's like 40 minutes before I get up one Sunday morning. So I get up, first thing I see, here's Trump. Make the deal in Gaza, get the hostages back, ! DJ Trump. And by the way, this week he make all these tweets and demands on people, and he says, thank you for your attention to this matter. He kept adding that in his post. So this week, but this was a big deal. So this week, this poster started appearing in Tel Aviv. Billboard for a new Middle East, a new chance for a new Middle East. Now, I want to make some comments about this. I sent this to some of my prophecy friends, and a couple of them said, whoa, wait a minute. So you have, and there you'll see people, they'll put up the picture of the Last Supper with Jesus and John in the position of Trump and Netanyahu, and then all the others, because there's 12, right? But look at this. So let's count them. So let's go left to right. You have King Abdullah II of Jordan. I'm not sure who that guy, I think that might be the Lebanese prime minister. Right below him is Al-Shara / Al-Shulani, I'm changing my name again next week, guy from Syria. Mahmoud Abbas, Al-Sisi from Egypt, Mohammed bin Salman. Then you have the United Arab Emirates, you have Oman, and you have a couple of the other Arab countries. So how many people groups, by the way, I think one of those is Iraqi. I'm not sure. I'd have to go through. I didn't have time I meant to check that and I forgot. So how many people groups are represented in Psalm 83? So here we have what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. How many people groups are represented in the passage of Psalm 83, which talks about people conniving against Israel? Anybody want to guess? 10. What areas do they include? Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, Syria maybe not, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates. I'm just telling you, put it together. So this was put out by an organization called Abraham Shield. So I know people in this group. I've interviewed some of them. And they are part of a group in the security establishment in Israel that really believes they can do, I don't know if they still believe this or not, but they have long believed, most of them, and they're from Mossad, they're from INSS, a think tank, they're from different areas, and they believe that there can be a two-state solution, that it's a viable option. Now, I disagree with that. We have 32 years of history of this, and it's not working out. So here is the Abraham Shield plan of the Coalition for Regional Security. And just listen to the way the language is used. And by the way, I did all these slides are from my presentation that I did on January 26th earlier this year. So I've been talking about this for a long time. This is not new, but because of the context of everything, a lot of people are saying, oh, look at this. Yeah, it's been around. It came out in January, I think, of this year, and I talked about it as soon as I found out about it. So the Abraham Shield Plan for the Coalition for Regional Security is a new Israeli political security initiative that paves the way for the state of Israel to emerge from wars of attrition to a reality of security, stability, and prosperity based on the current regional opportunity. And I used this. This was headlines, Israel alone, Israel's not alone. And these are headlines from The Economist, covers from The Economist. The Abraham Shield Plan to create a new regional order that ensures Israel's security and prosperity. This was done. So they have a bunch of plans, closing the front in Gaza, returning all hostages, establish a technocratic transitional government in Gaza, and a regionally led dehomification. That's technocratic. Do it, build the big, beautiful Gaza resorts and all that stuff. Number 2, implementing and enforcing the agreement in southern Lebanon through a zero violations policy and strengthening the Lebanese army. Now, this came out after the beeper attacks and everything, so this was now a realistic proposition. Number 3, following the fall of the Assad regime, and this came out just after the Assad regime had fallen, harnessing regional forces to stabilize Syria and turn it into a buffer against the Iranian axis. And that's true. Although Iran's trying to mess around. Jonathan Spire, a week ago, in the Jerusalem Post wrote an article about they're funding militias in Syria. They're funding militias, it came out this week, they're funding militias in Judea and Samaria to try to cause problems. This is still a very big deal. Number 4, deepening the moderate regional coalition, returning to a fast-track normalization with Saudi Arabia, in expanding the Abraham Accords. Number 5, implementing a blockade plan against Iran and preventing its nuclearization. Now, some of that has come about this week because of the attacks that were done on the nuclear installations. Number 6, an Israeli declaration of a gradual, responsible, secure path of separation from the Palestinians within a decade as part of a comprehensive regional agreement. So what you see is this poster appears. Then there's this big article in Israel Hayom saying, oh, look, this is what Trump and Netanyahu have agreed to. And it doesn't appear to be the case, but do you see all the elements of it are here in the Abraham Shield Plan that they've been talking about since January. So I don't know what happened. Maybe somebody from the Abraham Shield Plan, abrahamshield.org, got ahead of it. Maybe they were trying to shape public opinion and that type of thing. That's all very possible. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff here about the Palestinian Authority. This is a map that they have on their website. The black are bad countries, light green are ones we hope to come in, the green are ones that are already in. Sudan is in, but I'm not sure that they've actually signed it. But you got Morocco, you got the United Arab Emirates, you've got Jordan and Egypt already have peace agreements with Israel. But you see how they're trying to expand this. And the question is whether they'll get Iraq or not. But this is what everybody's pushing for. This is the article that I mentioned about the former foreign minister of Saudi Arabia saying, hey, listen, We don't want anything to do with this. It is still possibly says to return to diplomacy. Unlike other Western leaders, Mr. Trump should not follow the double standards. He should listen to his friends in Saudi Arabia and the Gulf Coast countries. Unlike Mr. Netanyahu, they seek peace like Mr. Trump, not war. And so there's still a very heavy contingent. In Tehran, though, this week, this happened just the other day. So the war started. They decapitated the IRGC leadership, nuclear scientists. This is a big poster in Revolution Square in Tehran. They're having funerals for all these guys yesterday. And it was a big deal. So here's the Tehran Times from yesterday. One nation, one heart. Jerusalem Post. Iran buries the scientists and military men killed by Israel. What did they do to the IRGC? They took out 40 guys in the leadership. Some guys replaced the guys who were taken out, and they got taken out. This is a picture. This is chilling. This is a picture that came from Iran about the funeral. There are the coffins of the IRGC. And look at this. How many are there? There are 4 rows of 10. Well, there's one on top. I'm not sure why one's up there. 40 coffins in that picture. That is, I don't even know really what to say about that, because if I say something, it'll be considered insensitive or something like that. But listen, this is a war. This is what happens in war. This was a massively stunning operation. Look at the picture. Remember it. This is what happens when you mess with Israel. Now, how does the Ayatollah respond to this? Well, here's one of his tweets. You see the boot here. It says, with all that commotion and all those claims, the Zionist regime was practically knocked out and crushed under the blows of the Islamic Republic. And that carries in Arab culture or Middle Eastern culture, that carries a very big deal, putting someone under your foot. That's a very big insult, like exposing the bottom of your foot to someone. That's it. And then over here on the right, it says, let me zoom in on that one. The punishment continues. The Zionist enemy has made a grave mistake and committed a serious crime, and it must be punished. The Zionist enemy is being punished. It is being punished right now. And look at the picture that this religious holy man, the Ayatollah, chose to put up. This is a sick, twisted individual. And then this is kind of interesting. Companions of Imam Hussein, peace be upon him, in the end times. You need to understand that for Iran and the Ayatollah, this is a time of significant eschatological significance in what's happening. And so here are dead IRGC commanders, and they are now companions of Imam Husseini in the end times. I would like to honor the memory of the esteemed martyrs from recent events, the martyr generals and scientists who were truly, genuinely valuable for the Islamic Republic. So, by the way, when everybody says, "Oh, Israel is just engaging in propaganda by saying they took out all these people," this is from the Iranian. Iran published this because martyrdom to them is the ultimate sacrifice. So let's, so this is, there's a link to this in the show notes. Jonathan Spire in the Jerusalem Post this morning. Iran's vision of proxy Islamist militias doing its business has been critically blurred or burned. What's it say? Blurred? Okay, sorry. And he's right. Iran's strategy for decades has been to establish these proxies. They're gone or neutralized in almost every case. This is a stunning operation. And so is Iran going to have to retool? And then this is from Herb Keenan, this was an interview with David Wormser, U.S. foreign policy expert, former Bush administration advisor, says can the Iranian regime be toppled if it is not understood? And he says, we need to understand what's going on. And I believe there's a link in the show notes to that, and I don't have time to go through it. And this is the issue here. The prophecy seems to be in play about Jerusalem becoming a burdensome stone, a cup of trembling. And it's only going to change. In the UK, there's a big rock concert called Glastonbury. It costs a few $100s to get in, tens of thousands of people. Here's one of the guys yesterday performing. Here we go.
But have you heard this one though? Death, death to the IDF, 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 death, death to the IDF. Hell yeah, from the river to the sea, Palestine must be, will be, inshallah, it will be.
What? Aviv Rediger, who's a commentator in Israel, said this. This kind of hatred occasionally filters. This isn't how Israel will fall. This is how Britain will fall. This kind of hatred occasionally filters into the Hebrew language world of Israelis. In a subtle sort of way, it radicalizes them. It makes them shrug at the world's pretense to morality. It is one of the sources of Israelis' unity and competence in war. And it's a major source of our enemy's catastrophic societal failure and incompetence. If you build your next generation's culture on fantasies of our destruction, you're taking a well-trodden path, the path of large parts of Arab politics across 4 or 5 generations. And by the way, I would say Mr. Aviv Rediger is probably a centrist in Israeli politics, but he's also believes in the state of Israel. And when that generation comes of age, he says, enraged and obsessed and too invested in these fantasies to understand that none of this is anything but a supremacist cult, your country will begin to increasingly look like the failed Arab world. Our enemies' obsessive hatred of us was their own downfall, not ours. Excellent post. So you see this. The concern was Israel, they were going to go from 2,500 missiles, 500 launched, to 10,000, 8,000 or 10,000 missiles in a very short period of time. And that would have, you can overwhelm the air defense systems. In Israel right now, in Iran, they're arresting Jews like crazy. There are still Jews that live in Iran. A number of them have already been executed. And then these are some of the Iranian papers today. Zion regime, this is what Khomeini said, the Zionist regime was crushed under our blows. U.S. officially enters war, Iran vows you will pay. And then see how they respect Donald Trump. You can see the picture here. How many coffins will Trump send? And so when Tucker Carlson gets on and does this, he plays right into the Iranian regime. And it seems like it's almost by design. More headlines from Tehran Times. Victory was achieved. And then they show this attack on the base in Qatar. Herald of victory. Iran hits biggest U.S. base in West Asia, and nothing happened. Nothing happened there. Something happened in Iran. Remember that. Polling taking place right now. This sort of shows the current. This is from Mariv newspaper. You see Netanyahu tied with Naftali Bennett, and they say that. I thought I had the whole thing there. Anyway, the ruling coalition has 48. The opposition has 61, but that can change. It's Israeli politics. And there was concern that they were going to go to an election pretty soon. And I think Netanyahu would say, let's go to an election right now. I'll take my chances. So this is the voice of truth. Half-truths are more convincing than outright lies. That's why pro-Palestinian voices flood the media. They never tell the full story. They describe the outcome, but never the cause. They show the effect, but hide the trigger. How does this happen? So here's a video of a lady from a pro-Palestinian Israeli group saying, hey, they're putting up a fence along the road to separate us from Israel. So the person that explains this, so you'll see her video first, and then you'll see the explanation.
Separate this Palestinian village from this Israeli road.
Do you know what she must have accidentally left out of that video? Israel is building that wall because that village has been throwing Molotov cocktails and rocks at the people driving on the highway. Yes, both Israelis and Arabs drive on that highway. And yes, people have gotten killed because of this. Israel does this when an Arab village begins to pelt stones and Molotov cocktails toward cars that are just driving to work or bringing their children home from school. Unfortunately, there are way too many of these walls. Walls that are only built when villages like that one begin to assault innocent civilians. Nobody is crying for that village. It's unbelievable how you manage to play victim, even though the people in that village are the only ones to blame for the wall.
So here's Trump. So this one would have been on June 25. Breaking news. I was shocked to hear the state of Israel, which has one of its greatest moments in history and is strongly led by Bibi Netanyahu. This is where he comes against the court process against Bibi Netanyahu, and here's an article on Israel Hayom yesterday or today about that. He's going to have to testify. He began giving his testimony 6 months ago. Listen, I tried a lot of cases in my life. I tried very complicated cases. I tried cases that were going to last 4, 5, 6 months. Nobody testifies for 6 months in a trial. They're doing this because what they're going to say, well, he can't serve as prime minister. Look, he's all tied up giving testimony in the trial, so he has to resign as prime minister. And maybe he should resign as prime minister. That's beyond the point. Is this is lawfare. This is what's happened. And this is an article in Israel Hayom about the Jordanian border is going to be a big deal because Iran's trying to fund terror groups in Jordan. This is a good article. I link in the show notes. When History Rhymes, the 6-Day War and the strike on Iran. They're very similar. This is a Messianic Jewish pastor. Is Israel? I'm telling you, folks, I have received so many videos from people saying, all of you futurists who think Israel's important or anything like this, you're wrong. You're engaged in theological deception and this type of thing. I'm telling you, stand by what I said, the most divisive issue in the church until Jesus returns. And it's sort of like, as Mr. Cantor says, well, what about all these passages? I mean, are they just, they're coming about? Is it just by accident? It's amazing coincidence if that's the case. If Israel is not Israel, then it is the greatest coincidence in world history. Ezekiel 36:24, Amos 9:14, 15, Deuteronomy 30, 3-5, and many more. And look in the comments to this post. There'll be people saying, show me all your passages. We'll take care of them. All that was fulfilled. Israel, the church is Israel. Anyway, Israel just stated that the nuclear sites were obliterated. Thank you to our great B-2 pilots and all others involved. Fake news reporters from CNN and the New York Times should be fired immediately. Bad people with evil intentions. And by the way, those two tweets side by side should tell you that he knows how to use lowercase. Okay, so when he's using up all caps, he's yelling. Okay, so here he was at the NATO summit. Just a couple clips of what he had to say.
It's also Iran made the statement, and it's also, if you read the document that was given, that Pete can talk about if you'd like, the document said it could be very severe damage, but they didn't take that. They said it could be limited or it could be very severe. They really didn't know, other than to say it could be limited or it could be very, very severe. And you didn't choose to put that because it was very early after. Since then, we've collected additional intelligence. We've also spoken to people who have seen the site, and the site is obliterated. And we think everything nuclear is down there.
Okay, so I do like how he handles the press. I would almost said manhandles the press, but
a letter just came in, and a statement came in from the Atomic Energy Commission of Israel, and I just wondered, this is an official letter, and they're very serious people, as you know. The devastating U.S. strike on Fordo destroyed the site's critical infrastructure and rendered the enrichment facility totally inoperable. It was devastated. We assess that the American strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities has set back Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapons for many years to come. This achievement can continue indefinitely if Iran does not get access to nuclear material, which it won't. It's so sad that whole thing had to go. But I just want to thank our pilots. You know, they were maligned and treated very bad, demeaned by fake news CNN, which is back there, believe it or not, wasting time and nobody's watching them. So they're just wasting a lot of time, wasting my time.
tell us how you feel. Please don't dance around the issue. Just tell us how you feel, Mr. President. Here's Pete Hegseth dealing with, what's her name, Jennifer Griffith from Fox News. And we're not sure who leaked this, but somebody did. Here's Hegseth at the Pentagon news conference the other day.
There's nothing that I've seen that suggests that we didn't hit exactly what we wanted to hit in those locations.
That's not the question, though. It's about highly enriched uranium. Do you have certainty that all the highly enriched uranium was inside the Fordo mountain, or some of it, because there were satellite photos that showed more than a dozen trucks there 2 days in advance? Are you certain none of that highly enriched uranium was moved?
Of course, we're watching every single aspect, but Jennifer, you've been about the worst, the one who misrepresents the most intentionally. What the president says. I'm familiar.
Report about the ventilation shafts on Saturday night, and in fact, I was the first to describe the B-2 bombers, the refueling, the entire mission with great accuracy. So I take issue with that.
I appreciate you acknowledging that this was the first the most successful mission based on operational security that this department has done since you've been here, and I appreciate that. So we're looking at all aspects of intelligence and making sure we have a sense of what was where.
Why not acknowledge the female pilots that also participated in this mission? The early messages that you sent out only congratulated the boys.
So when I say something like our boys and bombers, see, this is the kind of thing the press does, right? Of course, the chairman mentioned a female bomber pilot. That's fantastic. She's fantastic. She's a hero. I want more female bomber pilots. I hope the men and women of our country sign up to do such brave and audacious things. But when you spin it as, because I say our boys and bombers, as a common phrase. I'll keep saying things like that, whether they're men or women. Very proud of that female pilot, just like I'm very proud of those male pilots. And I don't care if it's a male or a female in that cockpit, and the American people don't care. But it's the obsession with race and gender in this department that's changed priorities. And we don't do that anymore. We don't play your little games. Yes, right there.
For certain that the uranium was removed from the facility before the B-2 struck.
So I'm not aware of any intelligence that I've reviewed that says things were not where they were supposed to be, moved or otherwise. Yes.
Kelly Meyer with News Nation, and just off the top, want to say we're grateful for the service of these pilots and everybody that serves. I wanted to ask you, the CIA statement said, when possible, they will provide updates and information to the public for transparency, and I believe that's what we're looking for here. Do you commit to share the Defense Intelligence Agency report when it is ready, so the American people can understand more about the intelligence assessment?
Well, actually, the report that was discussed, this preliminary report, was what's called a restrike report. So it comes to us to give us an assessment whether a target would need to be restruck. There's nothing that I've seen that suggests that we didn't hit exactly what we wanted to hit in those locations.
That's not the question, though. It's about highly enriched uranium. Do you have certainty that all the highly enriched uranium was inside the Fordo Mountain, or some of it? Because
that repeated. Sorry about that. So anyway, I have a long clip of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs talking. I'm not going to play that just because of the interest of time. And he said this. They built this facility back in the 2000s, 18 years ago. A young guy came and said, this is a problem. We need to figure out how to do this. And so over an 18-year period, this is the first time these bombs have ever been used like this. We didn't know if they would work. And so these guys developed, designed the whole operation over a period of 20 years to do this. So Israel's not the only one that plans for a long time. So we ought to be grateful that our guys are working there trying to develop these things to deal with these problems. It is a very significant geopolitical game that's being played. Trump got upset with everybody. What's this? Oh, in Syria, by the way, Steve Bannon, Jack Posobiec, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, Irandis Owens. Have any of you mentioned the 20 Christians killed in a suicide bombing in an Orthodox church in Damascus? No, because it doesn't matter to them. Because why? This is the rule. No Jews, no news. Christians are being slaughtered by Islamists every day in Africa. Do any of these people mention it? Does anybody protest it? No. And then this is from the Syrian press today. Syria is on the brink of joining the Abraham Accords. Okay, I'm going to turn down the sound on this. This was a big forum. This took place on the 20th of June in St. Petersburg, Russia. And this is a conference of the speakers at the session, a Q&A. And this thing goes on for like 2.5 hours. Here's a journalist asking Vladimir Putin, hey, what about Ukraine? What do you think about Ukraine? And he says, however, once again, resorting to power politics, our ideological adversaries, so to speak, chose to impose a military solution in Donetsk and Lugansk and Donbass. It was not Russia that initiated hostilities following the anti-constitutional coup back in 2014. Part of the population in southeastern Ukraine rejected both the coup's outcome and the authority of its perpetrators. It was against them that the military operations were first launched. So they started it. We had to respond. We had to do this, poor us and that type of thing. He goes, Mr. President, this is the correspondent, I'm not in a position to challenge the narrative you put forward. Let's just say that this is the baseline of what reality is. Let's assume this is the reality. Your army is advancing beyond the 4 areas that are considered Russian by Moscow. So what is your end game? How is your army going to go, and for what effect? Vladimir Putin says this. I want you to listen to what he says. You mentioned the regions in Ukraine that we regard as part of Russia. I have stated, by the way, you can get there. This is the Kremlin translation of this. And this from the Kremlin website. I linked the whole transcript in the notes of this program. You mentioned the regions in Ukraine that we regard as part of Russia. I have stated on numerous occasions that, in my view, the Russian and Ukrainian peoples are essentially one people. In that sense, we see Ukraine as ours. You need to pay attention to this guy. I do think that this plays into Bible prophecy, and you need to watch. Boy. You want to talk about a city in America being under judgment? This guy may be the mayor in this fall in New York. If you're a Christian or a Jew, leave. Leave now. Sell your property. Take your losses. It's a big problem. There was a big, and I'll have to do more on this later, because you can get the report or the opinion of the Supreme Court. You should get it and read it. This is very strange for a lawyer to say. It's actually kind of entertaining for the general public, because Amy Coney Barrett was a 6-3 decision. She wrote the majority opinion. This was about the nationwide injunctions being issued against Trump on birthright citizenship, but the principles will apply across the board. So these judges, they're like, I don't know how many judges, 600? One judge can put a nationwide injunction in and shut down American democracy. And Amy Coney Barrett says, I don't think that the act authorizing the courts to issue injunctions permitted this. And Ketanji Brown Jackson wrote back, well, this is the end of democracy. All of our rights are in Sotomayor, the blah, blah, wah, wah, wah. You know, the call me a wambulance, you know. They were whining about it, and Amy Coney Barrett says, you want to get rid of the, I don't have the exact word, something about democracy that elected by the American people, and you want to impose on that your view of an imperial judiciary. I mean, they really went at each other. And by the way, it wasn't a fair fight. Ketanji Brown Jackson is a disaster of a Supreme Court justice. She operates on feelings. She cannot think. And it's terrible. And of course, here's the headlines today. This is Time. Trump and Bondi predict Supreme Court ruling will unblock the MAGA agenda. I have a bunch of stuff on AI, but I'm going to save that. But this was the Time cover a week ago. Sam Altman at OpenAI has this thing called the Orb, scans your retina. There's the headline, Are You Human? Altman says, well, we'll determine whether people are human by getting all this data and everything. And the spread in the magazine says, the Orb will see you now. This is very weird. And then this article, somebody sent me yesterday, this is about ChatGPT, they're calling it ChatGPT psychosis. People are engaging in conversations with this AI stuff, and it says they're being involuntarily committed and jailed after spiraling into ChatGPT psychosis. Crazy. This is a picture of a Amazon data center just to the west of South Bend, Indiana, in what used to be a 1,200-acre farm. The data center will eventually consume like 2.2 gigawatts of power, which is enough to, I think, power 1 million homes. And by the way, if you count the buildings here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Amazon is going to build There's 7 data centers, and they will build 23 more of those buildings. This is Amazon's AI. They have a chip that they're using. It's not as powerful as NVIDIA, but they said if we just hook them together the right way, it'll be very, very powerful. These right here, you see these are generators. They're backup generators. By the way, if you go out to New Albany, you'll see the same thing if you look around those big data farms out there. And I think Amazon's spending somewhere around $20 billion more to build stuff out in New Albany. So now you can understand why Jeff Bezos and his bride had a big wedding in Venice. And I've heard it costs like $50 or $100 million. Yeah. What's that? That's pocket change to Jeff Bezos. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like, well, his net worth went down $10 billion. Okay, so he's worth $200 billion now. How did it affect his lifestyle? It did. Anyway, so, and then I have some stuff from Peter Thiel from an interview at Hoover Institution about 6 months ago, where this guy who's one of the technocrats involved with our government and everything, and Technocracy, talking about the Antichrist and Armageddon. And that's kind of a long clip, and I will be playing that in the future, either here or at one of our technology roundtables. Look, it's a crazy world, a lot of stuff going on. Pay attention. Sometimes I think, well, am I just misinterpreting things? Is it really that time? And I'm like, the more I talk about it, the more I think about it. I try to be conservative, and I'm thinking, yeah, I think this is probably it. How quickly it unfolds, I don't know. It could be a little while yet, but 30, 40, 50 years, I don't think so. I don't know. Anyway, pay attention, look up all those things the scripture tells us to do. Don't be afraid. Do something. Share the gospel. That's the best antidote to anything. So let's pray. Lord, thanks for your word. Thanks for informing us about these times that we live in, and just give us the ability, opportunity to share the gospel with those around us, because it is a world that it seems like a lot of people are taking a blowtorch to a lot of parts of the world right now. And we just pray that you'll give us strength, protect us, watch over us, and fill us with your Holy Spirit. In Jesus' name, amen.